All right, today's topic, talking about improving performance. This is the beginning of the improve section, introduction to the improve section. We're going to remember that we're at stage 4 of the process. We've already done the define, measure, analyze sections. Now we're getting into the improve section. And this is a time for you as the black belt to sit back and ask, is the team operating within the context of the charter? It's very easy to get out of scope and get off the project plan and get off the goals. Hopefully, this is not a stage you want to answer no to those questions, but potentially it's a good time to sit back and ask them again, because you don't want to go into management with ideas that wasn't part of what you were set out to do. Has there been a fact-based decision-making going on? So has everything been made on data, or are we making assumptions and guesses on some of this stuff? It's easy to do that because it's a lot quicker. Have you taken another look at your assumptions? Is everything that we assume to be true still true? Because sometimes you might have looked at assumptions way back in the define phase, and now we haven't looked at them again, and maybe some of the assumptions that we're making aren't valid anymore. And another idea is that this project may have been going on by 6 or 9 months at this point, and some of the assumptions may have changed given what's transpired in the last several months. Is leadership informed and on board? Hopefully you've had a meeting or two with them and they kind of know what's going on. Can the likelihood of success be improved by revisiting previous conclusions? Worth looking at. Okay. So, growth of implementation, again, as I've said in every introduction presentation, this picture is invaluable to look at and say, okay, where are we? Where are we going? On the input side, notice what you have to have already done. You had to have already done our data analysis. Had to have already validated root causes. Validated means we found a root cause and we have got data to support it. That takes some time, I can just tell you. It looks like one little bullet, but you've got a root cause and you know with data it is the root cause. That is not easy. Not easy. You've had to take some data and time to get there. So we have the inputs, and what we're going to do is improve performance, generate some ideas, pick some ideas and present our recommendations. On the output side, we're going to have some solutions, new process maps, documentation, what are kind of our project plan, implementation milestones, what we think the impact's going to be, and maybe kind of a storyboard of what's going to happen, how this is going to all transpire. Again, a very, very important slide as you think about where are we as we begin this next phase. Now, improvement ideas should focus on the identified root causes. Okay, it's going to take a long time to figure out what the causes are and make sure that they have data to support that. So whatever your ideas for improvement are, they should go directly at those root causes. And we make sure that whatever we're doing, the criteria that we're selecting is going to be part of what the business requires and what the customer requires. Always have to keep that in mind. Is this solution going to help the customer? Is it going to help our business? Okay. Let's see, it's kind of some rehash of earlier talks. This is going to be coming up with solutions. We might need to be creative. And we're going to talk about that in future presentations. How, you need to think outside the box a little bit and be willing to think about some wild ideas. Okay. This is kind of an important thing we're going to talk about more in this section. The team's going to develop criteria to evaluate the extent to which each of the candidate solutions may impact the root causes. Okay, very quickly. I know this is an introductory presentation, and we don't want to keep it very long, but very quickly, if you think about a vehicle that you're going to purchase, think about the last car that you purchased. Okay? Before you went off and started searching for that vehicle, you had some ideas in mind about what you wanted, some criteria. Okay? Maybe if you're like us, our last vehicle, we knew we had to get a bigger vehicle because a family keeps getting with more people in it. Okay? So we knew that the small car that we had wasn't going to do, so the new car had to have 4 doors. We no longer could have a 2-door coupe. Okay? So we had to have a vehicle that would seat a family of 5. And we knew that was going to be the case. And so that was a criteria. Before we started searching for a vehicle, we knew one criteria: must hold a family of 5. Okay? So that was established before we went and sought a purchase. And that's the same thing as you look at this selecting solutions. What criteria do we need to put down now before we start looking at solutions? Okay. Well, one of them is likely to be it better meet the new customer requirements. And another criteria is that it really needs to meet the new business objectives that we have. Okay. If you take Lamar University as an example, one of the business objectives is to get degree plans down to 120 hours. That's been a relatively new objective because the state legislature said you will, and we are. So that's, is this strategy going to get us down to a smaller degree plan? At the same time, the customers are demanding timely topics for their courses. So is this going to work? Okay, so you got the customer demands, you've got the business demands, and hopefully you can have what are those criteria? So keep in mind, keep that car purchase example in your mind, thinking, I had criteria before we started. And in the case of my wife, she really didn't care about color. She's not big on color, so color was not a criteria for her. I think that maybe black would have been the only one she didn't want it because he thinks it gets too hot. Okay, so those criteria were established before we left the house. Before we went looking for a vehicle, those criteria, we already knew what they were. Okay, so that's very important as we start to look at solutions. What are the criteria? The teams will learn how to sell the benefits of the solutions. What are the positive things? And the team will learn how to help the organization integrate those changes. Okay, so basically talking about how do we manage change? How do we sell our changes? And how do we get the organization to adopt our changes? And again, this is a slide I think you should probably read. I'm not going to go over. In this section, we'll talk about generating ideas, evaluating solutions, potentially recommending those solutions. Even though it's part of maybe black belt, we might go ahead and do that. And so we want to talk about the objective of this module. The team needs to be able to identify and evaluate and pick the right improvement solutions. Not easy to do. And we'll talk about change management. That's very important. You can have the greatest idea in the world, but if no one wants to do it, it's not going to happen. And develop an approach that prepares the organization to adapt to the change. Other good things. So here's kind of a little bit more detail about that. And we will get into these as the module continues. And right before we drop off this presentation, certainly want to say whatever the right solutions are, they're going to directly affect the root cause. No doubt about it. And some of the improvement solutions may require a new way of thinking about how we do things. And we're going to have to get some acceptance throughout the organization. One of the companies I work with, talking about a new way of doing things, you might discover that your organization is hopelessly inefficient in what we're doing, and that we could actually outsource some of this and be better off. I worked with a company that did junk mail, and they would mail flyers to your house based on the demand, their customers' artwork. Okay, and they had their own set of equipment to create envelopes from pieces of paper. And it was, the equipment broke down a lot. The equipment they had wasn't new by any means, and it was fairly labor intensive. And there's a big argument going on among the management about should we keep the letter shop or the envelope shop, or should we outsource these things? And that it was a whole new realm of thinking to say we're not going to have envelopes in our organization, because they'd had an envelope shop since the place started. And people had an emotional attachment to the envelope shop, particularly the manager who was over that area, thinking, well, I'm going to lose my job if we outsource envelopes. And so it was a lot at stake there for him. And other people felt like, well, we can't be a one-stop place. We can't have a customized envelope. Come to find out, they really didn't have that many customized requests anyway. And so the new way of thinking, well, we could outsource. We can still be a one-stop shop and not produce everything. And that, I realize it's kind of hard for you to understand having not been around that company, but it was a major shift in thinking, to think that we're not going to produce everything. And some people got pretty upset about the idea that we were going to clean out that area. But what it ended up doing is it took a lot of floor space. So we could now have another printing press in that area if you would just get rid of the envelope shop. So there was an increase in capacity that was really needed. So it really kind of solved two problems. One, it was expensive to operate. If we get rid of it, we'll have more floor space, and we can buy them cheaper than we can make them. Okay, so they had to present those arguments and say, okay, here's some ways, here's the upside to it, even though there was a lot of emotional attachment to this envelope shop. And they give you a kind of an interesting little grid here: solution implementation over solution selection. We want effective solutions that are the right thing to do. We have to meet the objectives that we were set out to do. We need to eliminate or reduce the root cause. It needs to be a permanent situation and be something that that everyone in the organization can accept. And they give you some kind of definitions: the wrong solution implemented ineffectively, the worst case scenario. Little or no process improvement, everyone's frustrated. The wrong solution implemented effectively, little or no improvement in process, they learn new behaviors that are going to be changed again. The right solution, if implemented ineffectively, some level of improvement, but not to the full extent possible. Project team will have to expend additional resources to mitigate barriers. But the solution implemented effectively, solution eliminates or significantly reduces root cause problems, and process stakeholders accept, implement, and control the improved process. So that's kind of the ideal case. And as we look at this very brief introduction to the idea of improve, and we're going to obviously address the major topics that are in the improve section with further presentations, but it's going to be coming up with new ideas, evaluating, coming up with criteria for those to evaluate them with, evaluate, present, and so on. So going to be a great section.